Hi, I'm Steve, and welcome back to video 3 in our sort of stair-step video series, I guess you'd call it, that I named An Awakening. As you know, in our first video of the series, I suggested that those who haven't made, as of yet, a permanent life commitment to an atheistic or agnostic type of life philosophy just might simply want to stay with us and keep thinking. Well, I'll assume you watched our first video and hopefully video 2 as we progressively climb upward in terms of seeking real truth in the all-important issues of life. And as we all know, these issues can often be very complex and at times inexplicable and at times troubling too, of course. But stay aboard with us and just see what might possibly be revealed to you that's of priceless value. You know, there's a Nobel Prize winner named Dr. Peter Medawar who seems to have run into a brick wall in terms of his previous convictions pertaining to the origins of life on Earth. Shockingly, I suppose, to his scientific peers, he might even appear to be a deserter from the loyalist fold of scientists who are ironclad Darwinian evolutionary believers. Surprisingly, the following statement he made is a very candid admission as to the limits, in his opinion, on prevailing science theories. He says this, quote, "I have in mind such questions as, how did everything begin? What are we all here for? What's the point of living?" That's a very candid series of statements. Wow, actually surprisingly frank as a cluster of philosophical questions, you might say, life questions, especially since they're from a prominent scientist whose life of study and research supposedly has focused on strictly the observable data. Well, anyway, our purpose here is only to touch on just a very few high points or highlights of the incredibly strong case many scientists are making today for intelligent design, requiring obviously that there would be a supremely intelligent designer of all life on Earth. So if you want to explore this a little bit further, excellent work, wonderful book that you might want to pick up is by Stephen C. Meyer, entitled Signature in the Cell.
Another way to view the logic of classically taught evolutionary theory would be to consider it as a strange form of recipe. In many of their writings, this seems to us to be what is clung to tightly by traditional Darwinian evolutionists. You could say the recipe is like this. Take a lot of goo of organic chemicals in a primitive sea on a lifeless rock like early Earth. Mix the chemicals in just the right proportions under a hypothetical perfect surrounding environment. Put in a big dash of luck, called chance. Stir for X number of billions of years and presto! You eventually end up with all the staggering diversity and beauty of all life on planet Earth. If we're thinking logically, does that theory really bear up under scrutiny? But now we need to turn to the second area of proofs for intelligent design. So we move from microbiology to cosmology. There can be no doubt we live in a privileged age. Stunning scientific discoveries over the last 100 years or so abound in this field of study. Everyone is familiar with the incredible photos which have been captured by the Hubble Space Telescope of a galaxy-studded universe far vaster than anyone had ever previously imagined. One prominent astrophysicist, Dr. Hugh Ross, has authored a number of books describing the fingerprints of a super-intelligent designer in the structure of the visible universe. Ross makes very rational and scientifically buttressed cases for intelligent design of the universe. Additionally, he details the utter uniqueness of the life-enabling position of planet Earth in the Milky Way galaxy. As to the possibilities of blind chance leading to life on a habitable planet like Earth, he commented that evidence discovered by astrophysicists reveals of the 3,547 planets discovered so far, only one resides in all 9 known habitable zones: Earth. Christians might well note that the profoundly simple statement which opens the Bible's ancient first book, Genesis, affirms modern science's discoveries.
These very first 10 words of the first book of the Bible, the book of Genesis, simply states that God created all that is. This presents us with one of these 50-50 concepts, or dilemmas, we are going to look at in greater depth as we go along. By 50-50, we of course refer to simple logic. Those 10 Bible words either express truth or they don't. There is no other option. Of course, as you certainly have suspected by now, we are opting for the truth option in this Awakening series. We have been proposing that the universe was a creation of a being of super intellect who dwells in an eternal dimension not accessible by living beings on planet Earth. The theories we've explored here only very briefly, that is, the intelligent design conclusions, can be researched in much greater depth if you're interested. One last observation concerns the theory of universe beginnings known by the generalized term, the Big Bang. It should be remembered that celestial observations of what is does not necessarily lead man to the solution of what originally was the original cause, since, to put it bluntly, none of us were around back then. It might just be that the true origins of the universe could be rather simply described in the way one Christian observer, a bit tongue-in-cheek, put it. Sure, I believe in the Big Bang. God said bang and the universe suddenly came to be. Well, that's about as much time as we can spend here in our series in terms of hitting the high points of the current intelligent design movement. But clearly, the scientific evidence strongly buttresses the case for the creation of the universe and all life. We'll now be shifting into a more uniquely personal and universal reality facing every living human being. And that would be, of course, that often dreaded moment of life's end. This next section, therefore, might be a little disturbing, perhaps stirring a few unwanted emotions in some, but I urge you to stay with it. Daily life for many of us is difficult enough to navigate. Thoughts of death are even more unsettling. Human nature is bent toward fearing, and therefore running from thoughts about those last moments of life. Death, or the fear of it, has been described as the great equalizer. What you're about to read could be a vital wake-up call. There are many accounts of deathbed statements made by those who lived lives given over to worldly pursuits and pleasures. Some are truly chilling. Expressions of terror, hopelessness, overarching fear and regret are not uncommon as these people faced imminent death. In stark contrast, we'll then look at a few of the numerous recorded deathbed words of people who lived committed lives of faith. There is a stunning difference. What if it turns out that the latter group during their lives discovered a real awakening to eternal truths that you have yet to discover? First, though, the two unsettling examples. The famous French skeptic Voltaire was relentless in his attacks on Christianity and religion in general. He proudly wore the mantle of the anti-Christian atheist. His deathbed statement is very troubling. His last words are recorded as follows. Thomas Hobbes, the political philosopher and also self-described atheist, is recorded as having said this on his deathbed.
Sadly, there are other accounts of final words uttered by atheists or those who claimed to have no interest in the issue of after-death accountability, or whether or not there might possibly exist a supreme creator to encounter upon dying. You can find these on the internet should you choose, but that's certainly enough for here. By contrast, you'll now read a few of the many peaceful deathbed statements of Christians whose words were heard by those at their sides. First is 17th century Puritan Richard Baxter. John Knox uttered these last piercing words and then died. Well, we'll close these end-of-life statements with the contented words of a man who was obviously in peaceful harmony with his swiftly approaching death. August Strindberg, a Swedish dramatist who died May 14, 1912, left a legacy of forgiveness and redemption. He died with the Bible clasped tightly to his chest, saying simply, "It is atoned for." If you're thinking a bit about this last segment, and especially if you're under 40 and in great health, death must seem most remote. It may well be harder for you to seriously reflect on what has been presented here. After all, doesn't death happen to others, mostly the elderly? Of course, we know that's not a reality. Just read the news. Though we'd rather not think about it much, unless it happens suddenly to a family member or friend, thousands die worldwide every day, never making it out of their 30s. That aside, serious reflection on why I'm here on earth and where I'll be 100 years from now are wise questions to ponder. We want to delve into what many believe is the most profound area of personal belief any human being can consider. This, of course, opens up the vital issue of faith, and in particular, the nature and uniqueness of someone who, by many accounts, has had more impact on humanity over the last 2 millennia than any other figure in history. These are deep waters. We'll hope to have you with us as we navigate through them. Join us again for part 4 as we near the end of our 5-part Awakening series. Good to have you with us.